Welcome, everyone. Hello. We've got Thabang Pebane joining us today. Thabang, welcome, everyone. Hello.
Sir, how you doing?
We've got Thabang Pebane joining us today. Thabang, welcome, everyone. Sorry, I've just got
Sir,
some feedback
how
I got to
you
take
doing?
care of. One second. We've got Thabang Pebane joining us. There we go. My apologies. Some technical difficulties. Okay, so Thabang, thank you so much again for taking time out of your busy day. I know you're practicing, and I think you had two hearings today, so you must be exhausted.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I'm good to go.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Thabang and I have we've got a relationship that goes back quite a few years now. You've been teaching for NCA Tutor for a few years. You've also been practicing. You've been a mentor to internationally trained lawyers as well.
Yeah,
You've been doing all that stuff. So, thank you so much for really volunteering a lot of your time. To help internationally trained lawyers, to help people, that are coming in after you, right? Coming into the profession. And that's a huge help. So, really appreciate you being here.
no, for sure. Thanks for having me. I'm always excited to sit down with you and have a conversation outside of tutoring. And yeah, man, this is a great platform, and I hope it's something that keeps going. Because yeah, it's really it's a bit lonely out there as a foreign trained student. So this is, I think, these interactive moments help a lot.
For sure. And we're adapting because years ago, we used to get together in person, right? So we would hold these live networking sessions. We'd go out to a pub. We'd just meet people,
Right.
interact, network, and so we are adapting, and we're trying to, we're facing this new reality here of COVID,
Mhm.
and I think we're doing the best we can. And this is amazing that we get to do this, that we get to interact with people on these various platforms. So we're streaming right now to both Facebook and YouTube.
Right.
And for those of you that are watching, um, please ask questions. Use the comment sections of the videos to ask Thabang any questions you like. Today, I think the focus and the emphasis is going to be on some of the elective subjects that Thabang has a lot of experience, in fact, teaching, and that is commercial law, tort law,
Mhm.
civil litigation, contracts. So those are the subjects that we're going to be highlighting today. But if you have any other questions outside of those subjects, we'll welcome them as well. So perhaps we'll get just start a little bit with what did you do today? Tell me about your day today, because you had two hearings and now you're here doing this some volunteer work, and that's amazing. So
Yeah,
give me a typical day as a civil litigation lawyer, and I know you practice criminal law as well.
yeah. So today was a sort of a standard run of the mill day. Either I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with civil procedure yet. Either I'm in discoveries or I'm arguing motions mostly. From time to time, we'll do a mediation. But civil litigation is mostly about resolving cases. So if I'm not doing that, I'm on the phone negotiating, trying to reach a resolution. In civil litigation, I'm primarily a personal injury lawyer. So I deal with, your typical motor vehicle accidents, slip and falls, sometimes catastrophic type injuries. So, yeah, it's a fast paced industry that I'm in, but I enjoy it. Today I had two motions that I appeared for. One was contested, one wasn't. And yeah, unfortunately today the law was not on our side, so it was a long one. But I made it out just okay, and clients are still satisfied. But that's typically what happens on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
Great. What does that look like? in the in today's day and age with
Oh my
COVID.
God.
So tell us a little bit about that. So are you going into the courtroom? Um,
Yeah, so so it's video, right? Everything is on Zoom. Uh, we don't robe anymore. So we wear suits. So you don't have to robe. Typically, you'd have to robe before judges before you appear before judges. You have to robe up. So we don't have to do that anymore. I find the process a bit more simpler. It's actually I like to advocate from the comfort of my house. And sometimes I'm in on my couch and I'm doing this. So
yeah.
it's pretty cool. Uh, it looks like you're in court. It's still a courtroom, so it looks like how it would look, except for you're on screen and you're not obviously on your feet. You're sitting down. So um, it's a bit. It can be complicated, if you have clients on the screen and they want to say a couple things while you're advocating and they kind of have to maintain their composure and all that. So it's difficult sometimes to control everybody that's on screen, but it's for me, I find it better than actually appearing in person. Some of my colleagues feel like they want to go back to being in person, but I'm just fine where I'm at.
From that spot on your couch, right? Right. Maybe it's a good segue into talking about civil litigation as a NCA subject. So
Mm,
I know that a lot of students, especially those who go abroad and do a 2-year LLB, they
mm,
have to take a couple of electives at least, right? The minimum assessment there would be 7 exams, right? Provided you've ticked all the other boxes. So if you got to do 7 exams, there are only 5 mandatory core subjects that must be taken.
yeah.
And then you've got some electives to choose from, and some of the electives are the ones we listed off earlier. And uh, you know, I think civil litigation is quite important. I'm also practicing civil litigation, and but you teach the subject. So, tell us what your thoughts are on civil lit. Should people be taking this subject?
Yeah.
Um,
I honestly think that civil procedure, I'd hope that in the future, civil procedure is not an elective and actually becomes one of the mandatory, sort of the core courses that everybody has to take. I'm really surprised that criminal law and criminal procedure are mandatory, but civil procedure isn't. And the reason why I say this is because if you're not going to enter into the regulatory or criminal space, you're most likely going to end up in the civil litigation space. And doing Civ Pro at the NCA level sort of gives you a head start because civil litigation is the biggest section on your barrister exam, which is one aspect of the bar exam that everybody is going to write. And I find that individuals struggle when they reach that point because they haven't had that base knowledge on the NCA level. So I think it's better to get started with Civ Pro right from the beginning because it's going to follow you. And a lot of the opportunities are in civil procedure. A lot of foreign trained lawyers are civil litigators, whether it's general practice or a more focused practice like tort or business partnerships, whatever people get into. It's all civil procedure. You're navigating the civil the rules of civil procedure. So it's very very important. If you are to choose your electives, I would recommend to choose civil procedure plus perhaps another course of your interest. But I think civil procedure is very important, and I think at one point I really hope it becomes mandatory.
mandatory. What are your thoughts on students saying, "Well, tell me what the easiest course is. What's a bird course?" Um, and
Yeah,
and and should I take some sort of bird course if there is such a course? I'm not sure whether there is. I think it's highly subjective,
I
of course.
yeah, I would say um I try to nip that mindset in right away because even as a lawyer, your seniors, because I'm still junior, your seniors are going to be looking to see if you're willing to take on challenges and not, trying to take on the most comfortable piece of litigation, maybe to look good at the end of the day or to win or to make sure. No. Um, always challenge yourself. And I think it starts with the NCA. I think instead of trying to choose the easier course, I think it's important to think about what you want to do. It's very difficult at the NCA stage to truly know where you want to end up, but give it a thought and try to channel, you know, your courses that way. I mean, I took Civ Pro because I knew I wanted to end up in civil litigation,
Hmm.
right? I took commercial because I knew that that probably could be a route that I might take as well. So you're not looking for the easiest course. You're looking for the course that will propel you to where you want to get to in future. And I know people say, well, oh, it's just, you just need a 50. You're just reading. It's just books. You're never going to look at that stuff again. That's not true. When you get into practice as a junior, you will be relying on those bar materials. You will be remembering that NCA course material, because they're rules, and you need to know what the rules are to navigate yourself through a complex system and to help your clients navigate through the system. You want to be sure about what you do. So choose courses as well that you think you'll enjoy. That will help you as well to pass. It will make the studying process much more easier and comfortable. So you're not looking for the bird courses. I just nipped that in the bud right away. No.
Yeah, I think we're in the same camp on this. I think you should be taking courses that are going to be useful to your practice, or at least that will assist you in the next stage. As you mentioned, the bar exams, right? So in Ontario, at least, some of you might be going through the licensing process in other provinces, but at least for Ontario, civil litigation makes up a big portion of the barrister exam. As you said, a lot of the materials are dedicated, and a lot of the questions on the exam are geared towards civil litigation. And so prepping for that at the NCA level, of course, would be good. Now, you teach both, actually. So you do teach the NCA civil procedure course, and then you also teach the barrister civil litigation section.
Right.
Is there a lot of overlap?
Yes. Yes. Almost almost everything except for, I'd say, the articles that you get with the NCA syllabus. Almost everything would be in the bar exam, the civil litigation exam, plus more. So
Mm-hmm.
you have a head start. And I noticed the difference between the students who did do civil on the NCA level versus the ones who are doing civil litigation. Well, they all have to do civil litigation, but you can see the difference. And I think it's really eases that process. It's an exam you have to do. You can't avoid it. So it just helps to do Civ Pro on the NCA level if you have the option to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into the bar, and it makes the studying easier because it's the biggest section of the barrister exam. Criminal is a smaller section. Public law or admin law is smaller. So Civ Pro, you really gotta. I can't
Yeah.
emphasize this enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there are about 60 pages, roughly, give or take some, about 60 pages dedicated just to public law, which includes
Yeah.
constitutional law, administrative law,
Right.
and your foundations of Canadian law. That's three courses
Yeah.
in about 60 pages of material. And then you look at, civil litigation, which is massive and hundreds of pages. Yeah, there's a big difference. So, yeah, definitely your public law courses make up a very small portion of the
Yeah.
barrister exam.
Yeah. And they take up a bigger portion, I'd say, of the NCA space, which is it's pretty strange to me because then
Hmm.
how many of us are going to end up? And I don't mean to, how do I put this in a nice way? But really, how many of us are going to end up being public lawyers?
Hmm.
Most of us. will end up being civil litigation. And I don't, I'm not saying that foreign trained lawyers or NCA students won't end up in that public space, but it is more difficult to get in, So it's weird. It's almost like it's backwards. The NCA stage, foundations, admin, constitutional. That's what everybody talks about, and then you get to the bar and it's like this much.
It's surprising. It's very surprising.
Yeah, so it's quite a
Quite the
surprise.
contrast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Let's perhaps we can move on to another NCA subject, which you and I have heard a lot about recently because there have been quite a few students registering with us for remedial plans,
Mm-hmm.
right? And actually, we get quite a few remedial plans in all the subjects, but I think there's been a lot of remedial plans in tort law recently. And perhaps I should preface with what a remedial plan is in case our viewers don't know. So the NCA will allow you to attempt a subject 3 times at most. And if you fail a subject on your third attempt, after your third attempt, there is one final Hail Mary, if you'll say. If you obtain a remedial plan, and the remedial plan is either by taking a course in law school or taking a prep course with a company like ours, for example, and we set out a plan for you. And we'll work with you. All of our plans include, private, individual hand-holding and tutoring, right, where we can actually review your work, review your writing, and show you how to improve it, right? And so we've been getting a lot of students recently in torts, and do you think it's a harder course, or what's happening? I mean, as compared to the other courses, what are your thoughts on it?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm still, so far we've been successful, right, with the students that we've had.
Yeah.
I'm still wrapping my head around it, but I think one of the bigger issues is um, individuals don't. I think they are relying too much on what I'd call the UK base law. So, and the NCA is looking for people to be on top of the updated materials and the updated case law and the Canadian interpretation on some of the principles that stem from the UK. And if individuals who've studied in the UK will understand, your bigger cases like Donahoe versus Stevenson and sort of your big UK cases that have carried over into Canada. And I think people stop there with their analysis and they ignore some of the smaller, lower court Canadian cases. But you are in Canada, you are in Ontario, so we need to see that you actually are referencing those rules or those cases in your analysis. It doesn't help just to use, the original principle precedents from the UK. And then it's just how to apply principles in court that I find are an issue for a lot of, especially those who aren't from the UK or US jurisdictions. Individuals tend to struggle with causation, principles of negligence, and I think it's just learning how to structure the information that they absorb in a way that the examiners would prefer. So I don't think it's harder than criminal. In fact, it's very similar to the way criminal law is applied. There's also causation analysis in criminal law as well. There's also, I think, a relationship between those principles in the US and the UK with criminal law as well. So I wouldn't say tort is harder than any other subject. I'll just say that it's there's people need to be more on top of their Canadian case law, and because the interpretations then start to change as you go up with the change. with,
Right.
with certain cases. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Perhaps we can, or you can tell me, what does a remedial plan mean? I mean, what sort of things are you looking at when you're trying to help students, and how do we go about doing that? I know you do that yourself. I also tutor students privately with remediation plans, but what's your take on the remediation plan, and how do you work with those
I
individuals?
I think for me, I focus on practice exams, uh, you know, just practice exam, practice exam, practice exam, because I find with the remedial students, the issue is how they are applying the information that they already know. It's their third time round. They've looked at the materials in and out, they can literally tell you what the materials say and discuss it with you, but then you look at the feedback that they're getting, and yeah, it's applying, certain principles and answering in a structured manner, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of individuals I find are struggling with IRAC, or how to separate the issues from the rules and the analysis and the conclusion. So I find that that's the biggest issue with remedial students. And once we get that done, they tend to pass. Once they understand how to just apply the information that they already know, they pass.
Yeah. Can we perhaps we can say it's maybe just a mismatch or a misunderstanding of what the expectations are for the
Yeah.
exam, because like you said, they know the materials, they don't know how to present it um, in a way that's expected by the NCA. And I don't think it's very clear of what the expectations are. Right? We do have a syllabus, and the syllabus may kind of hint towards analysis and all that, but in practice, what does that mean?
Hmm.
There are some practice answers floating around which don't really, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. I yeah.
so the expectations, I think, are, or I think people misunderstand what the expectations are from the NCA level. And, one of the, top secrets, I'll give it out here, I don't mind. One of the secrets I tell students is no, don't pay for practice exam. Don't pay for practice answers that someone's written for you. I can, I've got this secret place where you can get practice answers for free, thousands and thousands of practice answers for free. And they go, oh, really? Where? And I say,
Oh,
it's called the Supreme Court of Canada's website. Right? You open up a decision and you actually read the decision. Have you ever seen an answer so perfect? Right? Have you ever seen an analysis, right? So well presented. That's exactly what's expected of you on the exam. And, there's no magic pill to swallow. You read
yeah.
how they organize their decisions, how they set out the rules, how they apply themselves to, the facts at hand, and voila, you have a great answer, right? So,
There's no
you know,
shortcut.
there's no
There's no shortcut.
right. You should read a few cases, and I'm not saying you should read every single case that's on the syllabus, but reading a few major cases and looking at the way the answers are structured, the way the application is done, will go a long way in understanding what the expectations are in the NCA exams. And don't rely on other people to do that for you, right? You can do that yourself.
It's completely pointless, because you don't know what you're walking into when you get there, right? When you
Hmm.
get to the exam. So you have this set answer or set answers that you're relying on, and you're hoping basically that you have a similar scenario pop up in your exam. And often that's not the case. And you've now spent a whole lot of money on buying these materials online, and yeah, you just end up having to write it again and starting from scratch, and having to read, reread, or whatever have you. So I
Hmm.
think it's I've never seen those, by the way. I haven't seen any how those structured answers look like.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, I'd advise against that completely.
Yeah, I mean, you could just get those structures from the Supreme Court itself, right?
Mhm.
And it's great, right? So people are shocked to find out that there are answers out there. I'm like, yes, they are, and they're free.
Right.
You can get them on Canly, or you can get them on Lexum, or right on the Supreme Court's website, where they report their cases. So it's really useful to read those cases in full and understand how judgments should be structured. And
Right.
often you're expected to write, the kind of decisions, right? And that's how you'd be writing them. So great tip from us today is read a few decisions. I
Right.
think it'll go a long way in helping you understand what the expectations are for the exam and how to be structuring how you
Yeah.
should structure your answers.
Just to interject, like I
Yeah,
can't say this enough.
please.
You can find how to do pith and substance, how to answer a charter question in the decisions themselves. It's there. It's not magical. It's not a myth. Literally Peter Hawk doesn't get it anywhere else but the Supreme Court as well. So I find with constitutional a lot of people want to know, well, how do you do pith and substance? How do you do charter? It's there.
It's there.
It's there.
It's
Yeah.
there.
Right.
It's true. It's there. It's there. Of course, there are the nuanced cases, and there are
Mm.
cases where there are disagreement or inconsistencies even within the Supreme Court. But that's those are kind of rare. Most of the law is settled, right? So, or much of the law is settled. There are new evolving areas, as we see in administrative law. It's still an evolving area, and hopefully going the right direction these days.
Mm.
But okay, we're not here to talk about constitutional and administrative law. So we've chatted about torts, and I agree. I don't think there's anything in particular that makes torts more challenging.
Mm.
Um, I think the subject and the content of the material is equally challenging, right, as some of the other subjects. But people fall into the trap of how to present those materials,
Mm.
or perhaps relying on UK-based principles, as you say, or they're relying on materials from the UK themselves. I'm not sure, right? So try and keep it Canadian-based, Canadian focus. Let's perhaps move on to contract law. And contract law has been something that you've been working on for a while now with our students. Um, is this one of those courses that you think people should take, contract law, or um, you know, does it affect your day to day in your practice? What are your thoughts?
Oh man, this is one of those where it really depends on, again, what you want to do. I wouldn't push contract law the way I push civil procedure, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But the chances are is if you are a contract lawyer and you are doing partnership disputes, for example, and you end up in litigation, then contract and civ pros is really what you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to work in-house, contract law is also important as well, because you are going to be reviewing a lot of agreements, and you want to know the nuances when it comes to breaches of contract, exemption clauses, you name it. So this a contract is not one of those where I would say you've got to take, but I would say, if you are looking to work in a corporate space in-house, or you want to deal with uh, um, institutional clients, then yeah, contract law would help. Because usually those disputes around some sort of breach of contract or some sort of issue with complying with an agreement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, another course, kind of, perhaps I feel the same way about this course as you do with civil procedure, would be business organizations.
Mm,
And I know that's something you've worked on as well.
yeah.
Um, it's just business organizations. Perhaps I take it for granted because I come from a business background. My undergraduate degree, spent 5 years studying business and working in business, and so it seems like second nature to me. But then I realized that we have a lot of lawyers that are getting qualified that have almost no experience in business, and
Yeah,
wow, there are so many areas of law that touch on business. I can't even think of a practice area that won't touch on business,
right.
right? You're doing estate planning, that's going to be business. You're doing family
Mhm,
law, it's going to touch on business,
mhm.
right? If you're division of assets and stuff like that, and valuing businesses and stuff. I mean, you have to understand business law, and I feel like it's such a crucial aspect, right? If you're working in-house counsel, you know,
Yeah,
to know business law. So if it's an elective you're looking for, I think business law is incredibly useful. It's called business organizations um, in the NCA level, and then for the solicitor exam, it is
oh,
the largest section of the solicitor
that's
exam.
another
Right?
one. That's another one. Yeah, that's another one that will prep you for the bar on the solicitor side, right? Especially when it comes to, and then there's tax law too on that as well, which is is a pretty big headache, but it helps if you already are prepared when it comes to business organization and association, or business corporate law, or the relationships, the shareholder, director. So if you already are, you know, at a certain level with your comprehension when it comes to that, and when you get to the tax aspect of the solicitor exam, then you can focus more on that and get on top of that, and you're more likely to increase the chances of passing the solicitor exam. So
Mm-hmm.
this is another big one.
Business is a huge one, I think. Definitely recommend taking business organizations. Now, perhaps related to business organizations, but different in many respects, it would be the commercial law subject. And
Yeah.
I don't teach commercial law, but perhaps you can touch on what are some of the
Right.
major differences or subjects that are touched on in commercial law. How does it differ from business
Mhm.
organizations?
I would say commercial law is all about, um, it's mostly about secured transactions in personal property. So not real property. And the difference between real property and personal property is basically, real property is like, a residential, commercial buildings, land, whereas property is your business, your equipment, your inventory, right? And you do, it is a major aspect of the solicitor exam. In fact, the business law section of the solicitor exam is split into two. It's split into business organizations and commercial law. So commercial law, it works the same as property law, where these secure transactions in personal property are registered on the Ontario Property Register, and they're governed by the piece of legislation that we refer to as the PPSA, right? Personal Property Securities Act. So that piece of legislation informs us as to who or which secured lender should or ought to have priority over the other, right? So it's all about those semantics and how to understand how to characterize who should have that priority in the event a debtor defaults.
Hmm.
Big businesses have a lot of secured lenders. I don't know if people know this, but you have banks, you have other private lenders that take out that agree to secure transactions in a lot of business property, whether it's their equipment, their inventory, even consumer goods like your car. If you're leasing a car, that's a secure transaction in personal property. If you default, your agreement with the car dealership is registered, most likely registered on the Ontario Personal Property Registry. So it's a really big aspect of the solicitor exam. And if you do intend to do more solicitor work, you want to work in a bank, or you want to work in-house for a financial institution or an institution that lends money, right? Then I would recommend that you take commercial law. I would recommend that you take contract law and business organizations, because that will set you up to really understand that industry, right?
Yeah, great.
Aside from finance
Yeah,
and
that was a great summary. And if I may, I'll just, business organizations, for those of you that are not familiar with the syllabus, is more to do with the different business vehicles that you have for running a business, right? So whether it be a sole proprietorship, partnerships, corporations, various types of partnerships, different types of corporate structures that exist. So understanding those different structures, and more importantly, is the allocation of risks between various stakeholders, right? Whether those stakeholders are owners, creditors, suppliers, whatever they may be, right? Shareholders, whatever it is. So that is the business organizations course, in comparison with the commercial law course. Now, we do have a few questions that came through, and I think the first. Maha says, it's been almost a year that I've sent my documents, but there's no response from the NCA office. So I'm happy to answer that one. Now, if all of if all of your documents have been properly received by the NCA or sent to the NCA over a year ago, then you need to get in touch with them. Okay, don't wait another year. Get in touch with them. They are super responsive. They have hired more staff, more administrative staff to respond to emails. I understand that the offices are open now, not completely, but they have essential people who are checking mail, checking the documents that are coming through. And so send them an email. And say, what's the status of my application? Is there anything outstanding? Anything that you still need? Maybe it's possible that they haven't received your transcripts, or maybe they have, right? So find out what it is. You shouldn't wait a year before having to reach out to them. So do reach out to the NCA. They're super friendly. They're on top of things. And the office is open again. There was a period of time where they were closed, but it is open. It's not at full capacity. Not everybody's working in the office, but it is open, and they are checking mail and stuff, and they are going through that backlog that they've had of assessments. But a year is not a typical waiting period. So definitely reach out to them. Okay. The other comment here is perhaps any particular channel for practicing lawyers overseas who wish to practice in Canada. Okay, so I think you're asking, what is the process for an overseas lawyer to practice in Canada? And we can talk about that very generally. So the NCA, which is the National Committee on Accreditation. It's a standing committee of the Federation of Law Societies of Canada, and the Federation of Law Societies sets out national standards for education, both in Canada for Canadian law schools, as well as foreign-trained lawyers who are looking to get accredited in Canada. So the NCA is the body that's going to assess your foreign credentials, and you have to apply to them, which you've already done. And then you have to wait for your assessment. And if you do have a qualifying law degree, I'm not going to go into the details of what a qualifying law degree is, but look it up on the NCA assessment policy. But if you do have a qualifying law degree, then they will assign you a number of subjects, and those subjects can be taken through self-study exams, where right now all of the exams are done online, so you can be in any country you wish to be, and you can write these exams from the comfort of your home. So long as you have a decent internet connection, you can now write those exams from anywhere in the world. It used to be the case that you had to fly to Canada or to a testing center. For example, in Delhi, they had a testing center in India, or you could arrange for a testing center, but you had to pay additional costs for that arrangement. That is no longer the case. You can write your exam from anywhere in the world. It's invigilated online. There's going to be a couple of web cameras, and there's going to be proctors watching you. So you can do this from anywhere. And it's a huge change, and it's, I think, a very welcomed change, because for those prospective immigrants that are considering moving to Canada, it's a big step. And it's good to know that you've at least gotten through, much of the licensing process before you actually pick up and go to Canada, where it's unknown. Will I be successful or not? Can I make it through? At least you've gone through your NCA exams, and then you can say, okay, well, should I pick up and move to Canada? Because it's a big move. I'm an immigrant to Canada myself, but I was very young when my parents immigrated, but they immigrated with me. I think Thabang as well. So we know what that's like. I think we were younger, so we don't have the same stresses as our parents did, maybe, or adults moving to a new country. But I'm not sure about your experience, Thabang, but it's quite stressful. Can I practice here? Can I work here? So it's nice that you can get your feet wet in whatever country you're in and start the licensing process and start the examination process. Now, this is not the actual licensing process. So, going through the NCAs, and once you've completed the NCAs, does not mean that you become a lawyer. It means that at the end of the process, you should obtain what's called a certificate of qualification, which would then allow you to start the licensing process. And there are different processes in the various provinces and territories. So you have to decide which province or territory you wish to immigrate to, and then you have to read the details of that law society, go to their website, and read what the qualifications are for becoming a lawyer in that province. Okay, but once you've become a lawyer in one of the provinces, it's just a matter of money to move jurisdictions, basically. So it's quite easy to become licensed in a different jurisdiction. There are just fees and costs involved. And save Quebec, though, which is a civil and common jurisdiction, you need to have civil background, and you need a different assessment. The NCA assessment will not work. You have to go through the Barreau du Québec to get assessed and licensed through them. Okay. So another question came through is, do I have to move to Canada to practice? Can't I just stay overseas and just get a license? Thabang, do you want to?
I was thinking about this the other day, because we're pretty much online now, although I think for urgent matters and trials, please don't quote me on this. For urgent matters and trials, I think they are still appearing in person. So outside of that, and outside of our time zone differences, I don't see how.
I think it's a question for the Law Society, actually. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I actually had dinner with a judge a few weeks ago in Toronto, and we had this conversation about whether the judges had to be in Ontario, because they were having hearings online. And I'm like, can you go to cottage and do your hearings? Yeah, sure, you can go to the cottage. I'm like, can you go to Costa Rica or something, or just be on vacation and do your hearing? She's like, I don't know if the chief justice would like that.
Right.
So I mean, of course, the judiciary is separate and apart from the bar, but I'm not sure. I think there are things that you may be able to do from anywhere, which is fine. I don't know if there are any restrictions. I know that, for example, Commissioner of Oaths now, I read that there was some changes in the law. And of course, none of this is legal advice. You should look up the information yourself. We're not here dishing out legal advice. But I do remember reading some changes saying that you can commission oaths. They no longer have to be in person, they can be online. And the commissioner itself does not have to be in Ontario either, which is interesting.
Right.
So there's that. Now, I think that's different than notarizing documents, but at least commissioning documents.
Yeah,
Um,
and with litigation, we're swearing our affidavits now electronically as well.
mhm,
Um, but I don't think there's a definite answer to that question. I think it could be
mhm.
if we keep on this trajectory and it develops, perhaps maybe.
Yeah.
Um,
I think you also should check your local bar. So
mm,
wherever you are, physically located. Because in Ontario, for example, if you move to Ontario, you can't practice. I think you said you're from Pakistan, right? So you can't practice in Ontario. You can't practice Pakistani law
yes.
without being licensed by the Law Society of Ontario. To do so, you need to be licensed as a foreign legal practitioner, I think it's called, and you need to obtain a certificate for that, and you have to pay an annual fee for that, and you fall under the jurisdiction of the Law Society of Ontario. So you have to look at your local rules as well to see if it'll allow you
Mm.
to practice foreign law, while being physically present in that jurisdiction.
Oh, I see. I thought he was asking once he's qualified in Ontario, whether or not he could practice from anywhere around the world.
From anywhere. Yeah. I don't know, because if the local bar doesn't allow you to practice Ontario law without being licensed as a
Mm.
foreign legal practitioner for Ontario law, right?
Right.
Like you would have to if you moved to Ontario and you wanted to practice, Pakistani law, or you wanted to practice, law from any other country. You cannot do so. The Law Society of Ontario does not allow you to do so unless you are
Mm.
registered as a foreign legal practitioner. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure there are, a number of nuances you have to look into. We don't know them all, of course, and just those are some considerations you should think about. But great questions, and that's very good. Appreciate those comments and questions. And even after this session ends and the live session is over, this video will stay up. So for those watching the replays, you're welcome to comment on the videos as well and post questions, and we'll likely do some follow-up or follow-up sessions as well. So we are kind of, we talked about those topics that I wanted to discuss. We discussed commercial law towards civil procedure contract, and we also talked about remedial plans. So that's kind of what I set out to do today. So
Mhm.
that's great for a first session here.
Right.
Thabang, you can find him on our, he's a mentor for students. We have a free mentorship program
Mm.
for new or recent immigrants to the country, or people considering immigrating to Canada. So if you look at our website, which is nca-tutor.com, we have a tab called mentorship, and we have, I think we're over 20 lawyers now that have been mentoring students for free, of course. There's no charge for this program. And, of course, we're limited in the number of lawyers we have to mentor, but we hope to continue growing that program, adding more mentors to it. So you can click on that link and sign up. And whenever a lawyer frees up, then we do assign new mentees to the mentors. So, please do visit that website and do register, and hopefully we can pair you with somebody. There's kind of an application to fill out. It asks you, whether you want a mature lawyer or a
Mm.
female or a male. And, there's a bunch of questions. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to pair you up exactly, because we don't have all the lawyers in the world, but we'll do our best to try and pair you with somebody that way. Okay. Any final thoughts, perhaps? Closing thoughts on where to start the process, and or tips for students. Yeah.
I think for students that are, really serious about practicing on Ontario, one of sort of my biggest recommendations is put yourself out there, and start thinking about forming really strong relationships with lawyers that are already in the field, because really that's what we depend on as foreign trained lawyers. We're coming from the outside in. There is a challenge, so don't hesitate or waste time. And I think I kind of made this mistake too, to get out there and let people know who you are. And we can say whatever we want to say, but ultimately it's your work that's going to speak for you. So make sure you leave a good impression when you're working on files, and always put your all. Yeah.
Yeah. Thabang, as always, thank you so much. Thank you for being a great resource, to all the candidates out there, and I'm happy to have you on our team as a,
Yeah, man. Thank you
uh,
for having me. It's been
yeah.
a good ride.
Very good. Okay, so we're logging off. Thabang and I will stay on for a bit, but thank you again to everybody that was watching, and we hope to see you again soon. We're going to try and get some of our other mentors on here on a more regular basis. So stay tuned for follow-up sessions.